So that segs us into our next category, sex offenders. We'll begin by defining a sex offender, which is simply a person who commits a legally prohibited sexual act, whatever that might be. Now that's bad enough. Forcible rape, statutory rape, forcible sodomy, lewd acts with children. Now, statutory rape is kind of a funny thing. That's, the having sex with somebody that's underage. And you got to be careful when you look at that sex offender website that the state police has, because they're really vague about what a person actually did. And what the charge says that the person actually did might not actually reflect accurately what it was they actually did. So we had a young man, and this is actually a fairly common scenario, who was 17, and he had a girlfriend who was like 15 3/4 years old, and the age of consent in Michigan is 16. And the dad didn't like the boyfriend and found out that he was having sex with his daughter, and they charged him. They rang him up on it. And he winds up catching a year in the county jail on a plea bargain, and he has to register as a sex offender. And that is not an uncommon scenario. So that whole statutory rape, you're looking, oh yeah, sex with a minor, child molester, baby raper, call them all these names, when in fact they had a girlfriend who was just a wee bit too young. And that can happen. He was 17, so he can be charged as an adult, and she was not quite 16. Yeah, Dad was pissed off about it.
I just missed the age you got down. You just had both ages.
What's that?
I just didn't hear you.
Oh, yeah. Lewd acts with children or fondling. We had a case in Bay County where a guy who was actually a neighbor broke into a house in the summer. There was two little boys, ages 2 and 4, sleeping in their bunk bed. And this sicko neighbor breaks into the house. The window's open. It's summertime. So he boosts the screen. He goes in. He knows the two little boys live there. And he was fondling the 2-year-old's privates when the 4-year-old woke up and saw him and screamed. So the guy bails out the window and takes off running. Well, long story short, they call the tracking dog from state police, and they literally track him down, and they bring him to jail. Now, this gets a lot of media attention because of the nature of the crime. So it's in the newspapers, it's on all 3 news channels, and so on and so forth. So all of the inmates have seen the news broadcast, and they've seen this guy's face. And I'm going to tell you, the day they brought him up from booking and intake to put him in a segregation cell, because you can't put him in a general population, right? You put him in general population, bad stuff's going to happen to him. So they're bringing him to put him in a segregation cell, and my partner and I are in a medium security cell block doing a count. Now in our facility, one officer would stand at the door, and the other officer would go in and get the count. Right? The theory being, if the officer inside got jumped and taken hostage, the officer outside contains the situation by closing the door. Yeah, I know, we can speculate on what would really happen, but that's what was going on. So my partner is in there taking the count, and it's a 24-man cell block, and it's full. And we've got medium security, but we got some people that are looking probably at doing some hard time in this, murderers and people like that, some robbers and things like that, not nice people. And I'm vertically challenged, so it's easy to see over my head. 2 deputies are bringing up this guy, and they're passing behind me, okay? So they've got this fondler, and 2 deputies are escorting him, and all of the men in the cell block are looking over my shoulder, over my head, and they can see who this is, and they recognize him from TV. I was terrified, because all 24 men started moving towards the door in a mass. And the things that they were saying, I will not repeat, but they made my blood run cold. They were very, very specific about what they wanted to do to that man. And none of those were nice things. And I thought, holy shit, if these guys decide to blow right through me, I can't stop 24 guys, I can't stop one guy, I'm not very big. If they decide to blow right through me and go after this guy, what are we going to do? Right, because there's me, there's the deputy in there, and these 2 deputies there. And if 24 guys decide to take a piece of him, There ain't gonna be any stopping this. But fortunately, you know, I puff up a little bit. All right, everybody back, and they did. One of those deals though, you know, what if? A pedophile. Pedophile. A person who is sexually attracted to and or molests children. So pedo, Latin meaning child, phile meaning lover of. So lover of children, but not in a good way. So we have Barney's mugshot. We always knew Barney was up to no good. I love you, you love me. Oh, sick dinosaur. Usually the most despised of all offenders. Did you notice Barney's eye was black?
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody got a hold of him and beat the crap out of him. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes child molesters. I mean, you would think, you know, prisoners are all like, you know, all for one and one for all, but they're not. There's a pecking order. And sex offenders are at the very lowest level. They're at the bottom rung of that ladder. Child molesters are even lower than that. When you think that you've hit rock bottom, get a shovel and dig, because that's where child molesters are in the inmate pecking order. So we see here this inmate who is serving a life sentence for molesting and then murdering a 10-year-old girl called Katie was held down and branded by fellow inmates when they learned of his crimes. So his forehead now says Katie's revenge for the rest of his life. Isn't that special? Now you might be asking, well, now wait a minute, hold the phone. Why can't we just put them in general population and let justice happen? Well, you see, there's this little thing called the Eighth Amendment that says no cruel and unusual punishment. So the punishment for committing a crime is losing your freedom, period. The end, stop. So we cannot knowingly put somebody in harm's way because we know what's going to happen if we put a sex offender, a child molester especially, in general pop. We know what's going to happen, it's a given. So we can't do it. Much as you'd love to. So yeah, probably other protective custody offenders got him. They usually require special housing for protection, especially for crimes involving children. We see the picture of the priest who was sentenced to a Massachusetts prison for child molestation and who was shortly thereafter murdered by another inmate.
Jeffrey Dahmer was murdered in jail.
He was. Yes, he was. And he was in special protective custody too. So, you know, the truth of the matter is if people really want to get you, they will. But we still have to do our best. I remember, you can see that this priest is older too. I remember when I was a rookie, we had this little old man who was in our special custody unit that we reserved for, you know, developmentally disabled people or other people that we couldn't put in general population, but you know, you didn't really want to put them in segregation either. So he's in there all by himself, and you know, he's a rough-looking 70-something. I mean, he looked really old 70. You know what I'm talking about. There's old 70 and there's young 70. So he looked old 70, and he's small. He's about my size, but he probably weighs even less. I mean, just a really frail old man, and he had that parchment kind of skin that you can see all his veins through and everything, and it tore easily, and he was what they call a brittle diabetic. And his diabetes was so bad that he had to check his blood sugar every single meal. So you've heard of, you know, having one foot in the grave. This guy was sitting on the edge of the grave with both legs hanging in, you know what I'm saying? And whenever I talked to him, he was very pleasant and polite. So, dumbass rookie, I says to my sergeant, well, that sweet little old man over there in F block, you know, what could he have possibly done to wind up in here? And the sergeant just looks at me and shakes his head like, you dumbass. He says, really, you want to know? I'm like, well, yeah. We'll go pull his file and look. So I go down to intake where we keep all the records, and I pulled his file, and I'm like, he molested his 2- and 4-year-old granddaughters. Penetrated them with his fingers. So, you know, whatever he gets at that age with his health, he gets 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. That's basically a life sentence. He's not getting out.